Hey, welcome to Morning Scone. Glad to have you here on this Tuesday edition. As always, please hit the red subscribe button down there if you have not already. I greatly appreciate it. You would literally be my best friend ever if you would hit the red subscribe button and tell others to do the exact same thing. So a trifecta that I'd like to talk about today: Pels-Warriors Game 2, a little LSU baseball news with Josh Smith and Nick Storz, shocker. And then a question I got a lot, then maybe I'll have a whole nother post entirely about NFL rookie deals and maybe guys, underclassmen that leave early that don't get drafted. So we'll talk about that as well. Pels-Warriors Game 2, of course the news for the game tonight is that Steph Curry is probable for this game according to Steve Kerr. He won't be on a minutes restriction, but they're just not sure what they'll get out of him. I'm fascinated to see how this goes. Not that really it matters altogether greatly. I think Game 1 was an indicator. And look, over a best of 7, we talked about this in the first series of Portland. Over a best of 7, one of the more fascinating things is how teams adjust. So what will teams do defensively? What will they do offensively? Will coaches change rotations? Remember a couple of years ago in the NBA Finals, when Andrew Bogut was with the Warriors, that became a big part of that series where he almost became a non-factor in their rotations after being a major part of their team throughout the season, just how the matchup went. So of course, Andre Iguodala was the NBA Finals MVP in 2015 when the Warriors won their first title. So rotations are important. So I am curious to see what New Orleans does sort of defensively to counter a Golden State, maybe try to prevent a run. But realistically, I think what we saw in Game 1 on Saturday was just how outmatched New Orleans is in this series. And we even talked about how, all right, if Anthony Davis and Kevin Durant sort of cancel each other out, you look everywhere else on the floor, and Golden State has matchup advantages. If you have Etuan Moore and Klay Thompson, Etuan Moore isn't going to grow 4 inches tonight. If you got Ian Clark trying to run someone off the perimeter, or you're trying to get Ian Clark to give you 30 points, that's not how this team is built. So you're going to have disadvantages whenever you try to have Mirotić defensively on Kevin Durant. That's obviously a mismatch. So we'll see what New Orleans can do. I just don't think they have the personnel to match up. I think that there can be a game where maybe Golden State is cold. Anthony Davis just goes off, just sort of floors it and goes off. I think that's going to happen in either Game 3 or 4 in New Orleans. But even still, we saw this in 2015 in the playoffs when New Orleans had that 20-point lead in the fourth quarter and they blew it. Steph hit the 3 at the buzzer to tie it, and of course Golden State went on to win in overtime. So I'm curious to see how the dynamic changes with Steph. What sort of percentage Steph is at physically in this series? But I mean, it does feel like a foregone conclusion. But like I said at the onset of this series, my primary objective would be, let's see, if you're New Orleans, how close you are to the gold standard in the NBA, which is Golden State, and where specifically you need to improve moving forward. So Game 2 is tonight. Pels are an underdog, no shocker, and we'll see how they do. And before the series moves to New Orleans, both the games in New Orleans are sold out, so I'd be thrilled if they could get one of those games in New Orleans. LSU baseball, Paul Mainieri gave an update on both Nick Storz and Josh Smith. I know this almost seems ridiculous at this point. Smith is going to see a back specialist either Monday or Tuesday in Baton Rouge. For those that don't know the story, I'm sure you have, especially if you're watching this show. Josh Smith, LSU shortstop, all SEC a year ago, stress reaction in his back, played the first 3 games of the season, missed the next 38. He came back for the midweek game last week and then the Ole Miss series, but they took him out of the Saturday game, and then he did not play on Sunday. Was obviously in pain and discomfort. So at this point, I don't know that you're going to see Josh Smith again. That's completely speculative on my part, but the people close to Josh we talked to before he returned sort of felt like he wasn't going to be back this year. So it was a surprise to many that he did play at all. So we'll see what happens with Josh Smith. But, you saw tangibly the impact that he made on the team. First game back in the midweek last week, he homers. He's a table setter at the top of your lineup. He'll run pitch counts up and long at bats. He's the table setter, and you need that guy, and I don't know that you're going to have him the rest of the way. So the Storz thing is interesting because, it's a guy that throws in the middle 90s, And even if you get him as a spot reliever, the example I'll give is Chad Jones in '09, and that may be an extreme example, but Chad Jones was coming 93 from the left side, and he maybe only pitched 15 innings that whole season, if that, but or maybe even less than that. I think maybe he had like 15 strikeouts in like 9 innings. It was, he was a spot reliever, a situational reliever, but when you're bringing 93 from the left side, it was something where they could count on him, and that paid off obviously at the College World Series as well, where they needed him in relief. And so if you can get that from Storz, even if it's a guy who, in a situation, if you're in a bind and you need a strikeout pitcher and you bring in a dude who can throw 95, I mean, you can get value out of that, even if you only get him for a handful of at-bats the remainder of the season. So I'll be interested to see if Storz comes back for that reason, if nothing else. And there's no sense in trying to save him, because guys like that aren't going to be on campus for more than 3 years. So get what you can out of him this year. And if he's healthy enough to come back and pitch and give you anything, it's better than nothing. Because when you're setting a postseason roster, assuming LSU's playing in the postseason, you're going to look at guys that you can count on to give the ball to in those situations, and Storz seems like he'd be one. So something from Storz would be better than nothing, even if he gives you 10 batters in the postseason total. One other thing I wanted to talk about, and over the weekend with the NFL draft, I got this question a ton. I did address it yesterday on AFR, so some of you may have heard me talk about this already, and maybe I'll do sort of a long-form video on this topic specifically. But a lot of I think we're programmed sometimes to say, oh man, the guy left early for the draft and he went undrafted, or he left early and he went in the 7th round. Like, that was a mistake. He should have come back to school. And I think if you ask yourself the question, okay, what's the benefit of coming back to school and playing another year? Now, for some guys, they want to come back and get their degree. For some guys, they want to come back just because they love their school and want to give it another chance at playing for a title, whatever it may be. But other guys are going to look at it and say, okay, I'm going to come back to school because I have the opportunity to increase my draft stock. Well, something that I think is often lost is with the new CBA that went into effect after the lockout in 2011 was the cap on rookie contracts. So understand, like, a 4-year rookie contract for drafted players. Every player has the same base salary, and based on where you're drafted, bonuses and incentives could increase. But once you get out of round 2, it's almost irrelevant. So like a year ago, and the rookie contracts for this year haven't been made public yet, but a year ago, for example, Myles Garrett, his rookie deal is $30 million. He was the first pick. Ryan Ramczyk was the last pick of round 1. His rookie deal was $8 million. That's a big gap from 1 to 32. But even if you go a step further and you look at the example I gave were 2 guys, Duke Riley, who's a 3rd-round pick of the Falcons, his total rookie contract is $2.6 million. 4 years, total $2.6 million. 3rd-round pick. Malachi Dupree was a 7th-round pick, who got cut and then picked up by the Bills. His total rookie deal was $1.5 million. So the difference between round 3 and round 7, and then being cut, being picked up, is a total of $1.1 million over the life of the contract. And I understand if you're a college football player and you know that no matter what you do when you come back to school, if you're not going to be a top 2-round pick, then, and you're ready, then go. It's more beneficial for you to start the clock ticking toward your 2nd contract. So when a lot of people brought up a guy like Toby Weathersby or Will Clapp or Kevin Tolliver. Now, Tolliver's maybe a different story, because Tolliver physically, if he'd come back and stayed on the straight and narrow and had a good year, he probably could have been a high draft pick. But then you look at what happened to Arden Key, who dropped into round 3. The counter is someone like Tre'Davious White. So Tre'Davious White could have come out after his junior year, wasn't guaranteed to be a 1st-round pick. He has a great year. He's taken in the 1st round by Buffalo. He gets a $10 million contract, and then also Buffalo allowed the team option for a 5th year. Tre'Davious White made a really good decision coming back and making himself a lot more money on the rookie deal. But if you're a guy that doesn't have that potential to get into that level, then coming back to increase your draft stock is kind of irrelevant. Literally the only benefit would be if a team invested a higher draft pick in you, then they're less likely to cut you. Like, you're more likely to make the team. But if you feel like you can play and you're going to catch on somewhere, then you give it a go and give it your best shot to go make the team anyway. So I guess my point is, like, a lot of fans criticize players that leave early that don't get drafted. My point is, it really doesn't matter, because what used to be, hey, come back and increase your draft stock and make more money, isn't really relevant in this current NFL, the way contracts are structured. It's more beneficial to get into the league and start the clock ticking toward your second contract, which is where you're actually going to get paid. So maybe I'll do a little more long form on that if y'all are interested. But with a lot of guys that were, you know, early entries that either weren't taken or went late, I know there's a lot of conversation about it. And so hopefully that helps clarify a little bit. So morning, Scone. I've really appreciated all the feedback. If you have comments or suggestions, please leave them below. I try to respond to every single comment. So if you leave me a comment, I'm going to respond to it. I absolutely will see it. I have it set for notifications on my phone. So leave me comments, tell a friend, and if you would hit the subscribe button on this page, you would be the most awesomest person in the history of the whole wide world. Thanks so much, and we'll see you tomorrow for Morning Scone.